direction. A long campaign is now.
This is the car market in Mogadishu.
NATO's military success against
many Western nations.
This is on assignment.
Hey everybody, Alex Villarreal here with my co-host Imran Siddiqui, and we have got a jam-packed show for you this week.
Starting with Jordan, Christians are among the refugees who fled Islamic State militants in Iraq. You'll hear from a reporter who spent time with one Iraqi Christian family.
Then he faced a life-and-death battle of his own. The NBC cameraman who got Ebola in Liberia talks with VOA's Tibetan service.
And in the U.S., an old house in Oklahoma and why it matters to American Indians in the Comanche tribe.
Finally, reality or unfair exaggeration, a private religious community in the U.S. and how so-called reality television is portraying its members.
Don't go away. We're going on assignment right now. Thousands of Iraqi Christians have sought refuge from the fighting in their country in churches in Jordan. Unlike the Muslim refugees who've taken shelter in camps around the country, the Christians have sought safe haven among members of their faith.
Reporter Tala Hadavi caught up with a family from Mosul who were some of the last Christians to leave an area known for being home to one of the oldest Christian communities in the world. She tells me how she went about gaining this family's trust. Tala, tell us about these Iraqi Christians that you met.
Yeah, Alex, so I went to Jordan in early to mid-October to do a couple of stories about refugees, both Muslim and Christians. I was interested in telling stories that were untold, and the Christian story was more recent and more, being that a lot of Christians from Iraq had fled ISIS and come to Jordan. I talked to my fixer, and we talked about how we could find out where they were. And media hadn't really covered it that much at that point. So we thought about calling the churches. And I met this family in Naur, which is in about 20 kilometers west of the Jordanian capital, Amman. We went there and happened to be a family that had just arrived that started talking to us.
Even if I'm here living in a hall getting handouts and so on, I feel like I'm better off with how people treat you here, not like how I was living.
We put up with leaving and the costs and everything for our girls so that they can have rights, so that they can have a future, because in Iraq there isn't any future.
So Tala, you talk about this family and how sensitive this issue is. As a journalist, what's it like for you going into a situation where you really don't know what you're going to find when you get there?
I think it's important to show that your intentions are right and that my story at the end of the day is not all that matters. It's about, hearing their stories first and foremost and making them feel comfortable around you. I didn't pull out the camera in the beginning, and I told them that I wouldn't shoot anything unless they were comfortable with us. And I told them that, where I was from and what our intentions were, and so slowly but surely they felt more and more comfortable to talk to us. But amongst themselves, even among the entire group, they were arguing back and forth whether they should speak to us. So a lot of them actually said no. Finally, the husband in the family, Fuad, came forward to me and said, you know what, I want to tell my story. I want to share my story. I want the world to know what had happened, what has happened to us. It was more important for me that they knew that I wanted to hear their story first and foremost, and whether I could get a story out of it and we could share it with the world was second.
Right, now this story in particular focused on the Christian refugees, but there have also been a number of Muslims who have fled the Islamic State in Iraq. You visited the United Nations organized camps where a lot of these Muslims have taken shelter. How was covering the Christian side of this issue different?
Yeah, so the biggest difference is scale, right? So there's about 620,000 Syrian refugees that are living both in urban and rural areas of Jordan. The Christians have found refuge in their churches. Caritas, which is an organization affiliated with the Catholic Church, has really taken into their own hands to help Christians that have fled ISIS in the recent months. So the scale is the biggest difference, but the tragedy and the trauma and the violence that they've fled and the persecution that they have fled is the same, whether you're a Christian or a Muslim, unfortunately.
Now your story in profiling this family gives a very human look at this issue. You know, a lot of times we're hearing the statistics, we're hearing about the thousands and thousands of people, but profiling one family, we got a glimpse into one set of lives. So when people watch your story, what is it that you hope they learn from it?
You know, my job as a journalist is to inform my audience, and I'm giving the facts and the information and hopefully a human glimpse into the lives of people that have fled violence and persecution. And that's really what I hope that people get out of this, is to get more informed and more knowledgeable about what's going on. And it just happened to be a family that were open to speaking with us and giving their side of the story.
All right, we're taking a break now. Still to come, an American cameraman who survived Ebola.
And a special connection with Tibet. You're watching On Assignment.
Now, if you've been following the news about Ebola, you've likely heard of Ashoka Mukpo. The American journalist contracted the virus in Liberia, where he was working as a freelance cameraman for NBC News, and he has since recovered. But what you might not know about Mukpo is that he has close ties with Tibet. Well, we've got someone from VOA's Tibetan service with us now. Yeshi Dorje joins me on set. Yeshi, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, so Mukpo has quite the interesting history. Tell us about his connections with Tibet.
I mean, yes, definitely interesting story. It's kind of, when I was learning about his life, I thought it would take a best fiction writer to create a character, you know, with a background like him. But his connection to Tibet is, you know, first of all, his stepfather was a famous Tibetan Lama. In the West, he was one of the lamas who brought Tibet Buddhism to West. And then when he was 8 months old, he was recognized as a reincarnation of Tibetan Lama who died in Tibet a long time ago. And he was recognized by a famous Karmapa Lama, previous Karmapa Lama, who's usually considered the third highest Lama in Tibet. So, you know, that's the connection for him is definitely both religious and also to some extent culturally, because, you know, as you know, he has two fathers and, you know, so on. So there's a lot of cultural, I think, influence from Tibet.
Of course, and you had the chance to interview him. Now he is recovered from Ebola. You had a chance to interview him now that he is doing well. And you talked to him about his ties with Tibet and about this responsibility he feels. I want to go ahead now. Let's roll the clip and then let's talk about it. So let's go ahead and roll that.
I feel a responsibility to carry on the tradition of Dharma and to carry on the tradition of Tantra. And I feel a deep connection.
All right, so very interesting that he says he feels this responsibility to uphold Tibetan values. Tell us what struck you when you were speaking to him.
Yeah, he says, you know, he feels very close connection and feels responsibility. But at the same time, he, although he is recognized as a Turku, reincarnated Lama, he feels that every individual has his own karma, and he doesn't feel that he has to be sort of taking leadership in the traditional way of reincarnated Lama. He wants to do his own sort of, and that's suitable to the way in American life. So I mean, when looking at what he's been doing in Liberia, and you know, you can tell that he does want to help others in sort of like Buddhist practices. You know, he's actually doing it, but you know, he doesn't feel that he has to be a lama and sitting on a throne and, you know, things like that.
Of course. Now, in terms of his health, how is he doing?
He's doing much better now. He's free of a virus, but he's in recovery. He said he has to rest, and you know, he's very amazing. He looked at a positive side of when he was sick, in sort of Buddhist way. He didn't concentrate on the suffering, but he looked at positive side, how lucky he was that he has access to what he calls the best healthcare system in the world, and, you know, best hospital, of course. So he's very appreciative, and he's excited, he's very happy to be alive.
Well, we are very happy that you were able to get this interview with him, and you have followed his story extensively, including his Tibetan connection. So thank you for bringing that little reported aspect of his life to us today. Again, Yeshi George is with VOA's Tibetan service. All right, we're taking a break now. On the other side, the story of an abandoned house in Oklahoma and its special place in Native American history. You're watching On Assignment. We talk a lot on our show about some of the most fascinating people in U.S. history, and one of those was Quanah Parker, who was the last chief of the American Indian tribe, the Comanche. Now, Quanah Parker was a fierce warrior up until this one day in 1875 when he led his people to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and there he took on a new life of peace.
He did indeed. Quanah's image remains strong among his people, but a significant part of his heritage is in Jeopardy in Oklahoma. VOA's Greg Flakes has done a lot of reporting on the Comanches, and he tells me that the last home of Quanah Parker, like his life itself, sits now at the crossroads of two worlds.
After giving up the warrior life and settling on the reservation, Quanah Parker became an advocate for his tribe. That earned him the respect and friendship of such notable figures as President Theodore Roosevelt. Bruce Caesar, a Pawnee American Indian, admires the Comanche and credits Quanah for their success running businesses like casinos while keeping the tribe's identity.
He did an outstanding job of bringing his people into contemporary society, whereas now they're one of the powerhouses of the sovereign nations here in Oklahoma.
So Quanah Parker came in to the reservation and quickly saw the way things were in the modern world. And so he learned how to do business with cattlemen, and the cattlemen respected him. These were former enemies. So it's quite a story how these people who had been fierce enemies suddenly became the closest of friends. And Quanah, I think it shows the kind of charisma he had, that he was able to do that he was able to make these people friends. And even the President of the United States, Theodore Roosevelt, came and spent time with him.
But what is the significance of his house? Why would anyone care about that?
Well, that's another interesting. Most of the Indians, even, big chiefs like Sitting Bull of the Lakota, he lived in a kind of a shack. I mean, it was a basic house. Quanah looked around and he said, well, I'm the big leader here. I'm the one that's negotiating things, working things out. Why should I live in a teepee or a little, log cabin? He first petitioned the U.S. government to build him one, but the Indian agent in charge at the time was a strict Baptist who frowned on Quanah's polygamy. He had 8 wives, and so he wouldn't do it. So Quanah went to the cattlemen, the Texas cattlemen, and they worked out something to build this house for him. And they built a 2-story house, and he asked to have stars on the roof because he'd noticed that generals in the U.S. Army had stars on their, the uniforms, and he'd seen stars like on the Texas flag and on the U.S. flag. And so he said, well, that's important. I should have stars. So they put stars on the roof. And this house then became a gathering point for not only the Indians and the people there on the reservation, but for local citizens, politicians, all kinds of visiting dignitaries.
We know that currently there's a battle going on between the current owner and people who are trying to reclaim the house so that they can keep it as a national treasure.
It's in danger of, not existing much longer. Part of the problem is it's on this lot, and the man who owns it has every right to it. Let's make that clear. His uncle saved the house originally by moving it from its then location on the reservation because it was in the way of a firing range at Fort Sill and could have been destroyed. So they moved it to Cache, just several kilometers to the south. His nephew and niece, Wayne, was the man that took me around in there. They look at it like this is something that is part of their family heritage as well. They have a kind of a sentimental attachment to it, and they want to continue to give tours there and everything. But admit that they don't really have the funds to maintain it properly. And you can see that when you're there. You can see boards are rotting and falling apart. You can't go up on the second floor anymore because it's, too dangerous. There are a lot of things that could happen where that house could just be lost. And it's a real shame, because this is something that really illustrates a part of U.S. history. It's something that connects people to that past and what happened then.
So next we want to bring you another story from the U.S., and this one is about reality TV. We all know all about it. The genre has become so popular here with shows like The Jersey Shore and Duck Dynasty and their quirky non-actors who supposedly don't follow scripts.
Among the most successful shows are those that claim to be about the Amish, a minority religion that avoids the modern world.
VOA's Jerome Sokolovsky tells me about his trip to Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, where many Amish live, and his look at allegations they are being defamed and exploited for commercial gain.
Enter the reality TV show, a genre built on the moral failings of others. Amish Mafia, now in its third season, is one of several claiming to reveal this community's scandalous secrets.
The Amish try to live like they did back in the 17th and 18th centuries, without television, not driving cars. Instead, you see them out in horses and buggies, on push bicycles. So they reject technology. That means they cannot watch television or be on television. They can't be filmed or photographed. They can't agree to be filmed or photographed. If someone is filming them, there's not much they can do. We did speak to a farmhand and vendor at this market, the Central Market in Lancaster. Sorry, they pronounce it Lancaster.
Oh, right.
and talked to him, just holding up the microphone to him, and we blurred out in the story. We blur out his face. We focus on this head of lettuce that's on the
right
farm stand
hands.
there.
Yeah.
Right. There was another Amish vendor that was okay with us filming him. You'll see him. He's
Right,
the one
I
with the
saw
meat
him.
grinder.
Right.
And he just said, don't ask me to do anything. I'm not going to stop. He was very friendly about it. He didn't mind at all.
So what was your previous exposure to the Amish community before you set out to do this story, and what did you learn in the process?
Well, I grew up in the Philadelphia area, which is just about an hour away from Amish country, and I had a very limited exposure. We would go up to an amusement park in that area called Dutch Wonderland, so I didn't really know much about the Amish, like many Americans. However, to do this story, I did some research, because one of the elements of the Amish faith that they're based on is this thing called Rumspringa. What the Amish are about is that you're baptized as an adult. So before you're baptized, it's okay for kids, for older youth, to go out and be part of the world, to experiment with worldly activities. So one of the reality shows, this Breaking Amish, is kind of about that.
I know exactly how to cheer up, babe. Cheers!
These youth go to New York City and they're trying out going to bars and having a wild time like secular youth may. So apparently some of that does happen. Now, the extent to which they really lead these libertine lives and they're engaging in crime and drugs and
Alcohol,
sexual experimentation, right. That's open to question.
Vendors are getting an earful about TV shows they've never seen, says Elmer Stolfus, whose beliefs prohibit showing his boyish face and engaging smile.
Local people know, they watch it because it's entertainment. But mostly tourists are the ones that actually ask, am I involved with the Amish Mafia?
Filmmaker Mary Haverstick leads a campaign called Respect Amish. She's not Amish, but had enough of what she says are falsehoods and exaggerations.
You're not allowed to take a religion name and target it to a very negative connotation like crime, couple it together and make a show out of it. That's so distasteful, offensive, and yes, bigoted, that would be thrown out the door by every network I've ever heard of.
This building outside Washington, D.C. is the headquarters of Discovery Communications, which produces Amish Mafia. The company declined to comment for this report.
The premise of reality television is something that is going to make a community look bad in, especially this kind of reality show.
Of course. Now, you mentioned the amusement park that you went to as a child, and the tourism aspect of the Amish community is something that's very interesting. So how do these reality shows play into that?
Right. Well, that's one of the discussions that they've been having up in the Amish country is, and the producers of the shows have been quoted in local newspapers saying, hey, we're bringing you more tourists. And the main response that I heard there is, well, we don't know that there's more tourism as a result of these shows. What we do see is that there's a different kind of tourist, people coming looking for kind of the seedy side of Amish life.
Yeah, the ethics of reality television, it is not a debate that will be resolved anytime soon. Thanks again to Jerome, our religion reporter, for bringing us that story.
Next up, bicycle frames are commonly made out of steel, aluminum, or carbon fiber for those high-end bikes that racers use. But in Ghana, an entrepreneur is showing that there's another material to use that's cheap, strong, and plentiful: bamboo.
That is absolutely right, and these bamboo bikes are proving to be a very eye-catching new way to get around. Reporter Chris Stein has the story.
Bamboo does not get much respect in Ghana. Farmers see it as a nuisance to be cleared from their land. Construction workers use it to prop up buildings under construction. But Kwabena Danso thinks bamboo is worth more than that. His company, Boomers International, has been making bicycle frames out of bamboo, sending them from the Ashanti region village of Apa to Germany, the Netherlands, Australia, and elsewhere.
It has so many opportunities for the country. Like us, we want to go into other, even when we want to go into other products, it's a great opportunity for us to revise and then get the people to know that there's great advantage of bamboo.
Danso takes young men from nearby villages and puts them to work sanding, gluing, and binding his bamboo frames. His company churns out about 50 of the frames per month and uses locally produced bamboo for the frames and cassava flour mixed with epoxy as one of the glues. Besides being a successful social enterprise, Danso says Boomers also serves as a source of livelihood for young men like foreman Abdul Razak. Without this job, Razak says he would still be living at home with his parents.
If this company it is not there, I don't know where I would be by now. Yeah, but because of that, I've got a job somewhere doing, and it's helped me. It helps me a lot.
Danso has sold only a few of his frames within Ghana. One of his customers is Walter Kujoji, who purchased a bike earlier this year. Kujoji says his solid wood frame rarely escapes notice when he goes for rides around his neighborhood.
For example, on Saturday, I rode about 5 kilometers around my neighborhood, and everywhere I went, people were just looking at me, and you could just once in a while you hear the exclamation, "Hey, it's made out of bamboo. Hey, that's the bamboo bicycle," And anytime I stop to take a breather, people come close to me and say, "Wow, we heard about this, but this is the first time we were seeing it. Is it functional? Does it work?" I say, "Yeah, try it."
With his shop overwhelmed with orders, Danso says Boomers is poised for expansion. He hopes to get more of his frames riding around, not just on the streets of foreign countries, but on the roads of Ghana as well. Chris Stein for VOA News, Apa.
Wow, Alex, those bikes are really cool. But just imagine I'm on a bike trip and I come across a hungry panda.
Well, see, that's the problem with these bamboo bikes, Bamboo is a panda's favorite meal, so yeah.
My bike's going to be dinner.
So you can't go riding your bamboo bike through the zoo, that's, I think, or the jungle. I think
We'll
that's the conclusion.
Well, it's time for us to bike out of here. But if you miss us, you can always catch us on voanews.com or YouTube.
That you can, and as always, we want to hear what you want to see on our show, so just go to Facebook and find us at VOA On Assignment.
Thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you next time.